Our house is unity. Our house is harmony.
I'd like to tell you the story of the founding of International House New York in the words of Harry Edmonds, its founder, and this is from his memoir. International House had its beginning in the autumn of 1909. One frosty morning, I was going up the steps in front of the Columbia Library when I met a Chinese student coming down. I said good morning. As I passed on, I noticed out of the corner of my eye that he had stopped. So I stopped and went back to him. He said, "Thank you for speaking to me. I have been in New York 3 weeks, and you are the first person who has spoken to me." "Well," I said, by way of apology, "you know, New York is a big place, and people don't ordinarily speak unless they know you." After we had exchanged names, I asked him what and where he was studying. He told me, thanked me again, and we separated. I went on about my errand, but I had no sooner gotten around the back of the library than I realized that something extraordinary had happened. Here was a fellow who had come from the other side of the world, China, to study in America. He had been in New York 3 weeks, and no one had spoken to him. What a tragedy. I retraced my steps to see if I could find him, and perhaps be of some service, but he had vanished into the crowd. That evening when I went home, I told my wife, Florence, of my experience. She said, "Can't we do something about it?" I knew, of course, that there were foreign students in the United States, but this young man was the first in New York City to really attract my attention. I began to look around and make inquiries. I found there were quite a number in the various professional schools and colleges, especially at Columbia. My wife and I decided to invite a small group to our home in the country on a Sunday afternoon. Much to our surprise, 8 or 10 came. We soon became aware that in front of our log fire, assisted by a cup of tea, a miracle was taking place. The fact that they came from several different countries lost its significance. Our sincere hospitality and the friendship of the occasion caused them to seem to lose their national identity. They were just students, friendly, jovial, talkative. We had several more such gatherings in our home that winter and spring, and as a finale, all who had come hitherto were invited to a garden party. About 40 came. They were delightful guests, and as they were preparing to depart, someone suggested that the gatherings be continued in the autumn. My wife and I perceived that they had outgrown our home. We must find a central place in town. During the summer, I discovered that Earl Hall at Columbia could be made available for our purposes. We had our first series of Sunday suppers there during the winter of 1910 to 1911, and foreign students were invited from throughout the city. We were careful to keep the emphasis not on food, which consisted of a sandwich, coffee, and a piece of fruit, but rather on the spirit of the occasion, the coming together of students from many lands. And as this was America, we found it desirable to invite a few American students. By another year, we were able to hold a monthly dance, a national night or two, discussions of world problems, excursions to places of interest, hospitality in American homes. Thus there came into existence the Intercollegiate Cosmopolitan Club, with student officers and a program of activities. In 1913, we leased a house at 554 West 114th Street, just off Broadway and opposite the Columbia campus. The idea was that the house would be a drop-in home center. A host and hostess lived there together with 18 men students. 40 to 50 came in for meals. But Sunday suppers were too crowded, and the house rapidly became inadequate for our expanding work. Just when the idea of a suitable building was born, I cannot say exactly. No obstacles had been encountered in the development of the club. Its membership had climbed in the hundreds. The activities swamped our facilities. The spirit was wonderful, and we definitely began to believe and feel out the idea with the students that we must have a building adequate to our needs, a large portion of it given over to residential purposes with ample space for activities on the premises. Indeed, the club and its program were rolling up like a giant snowball, which it was feared might break apart from its own mass if it were not anchored and protected with an adequate material equipment. Mr. Edmonds continues to tell the reader that in 1920 the Dodge family contributed money for the purchase of a parcel of land. Then back to his words, this was the period just after the end of World War I. Times were bad, peace was scarcely born, money was required in vast sums for relief all over the world. American generosity was being stretched to the very limit. Mr. Dodge Sr. invited my wife and me to his home in Riverdale, as he said, to celebrate the securing of the site. That was an achievement. But we were no sooner seated at dinner than he said, "Harry Edmonds, we've made a beginning, but it will be some time before you can have your building." Edmonds then tells us that several potential donors were pursued unsuccessfully, and one of them, Mrs. Straight, promised to hold a tea to which she would invite potential givers. Then he continues, "We had the tea. It was a big one. 30 or 40 people attended, representing in wealth perhaps $1 billion. Mrs. Straight opened the meeting and gave me a warm-hearted introduction. I described our work and our plans. Then Harry Emerson Fosdick stood up and said, "This is one of the most far-reaching pieces of work in the world. There are other great needs, of course, but this need we must meet, and we must meet it now." We crowded into the dining room for refreshments. Ever so many people spoke to me with enthusiasm, saying, "Thank you for inviting us. You are doing a marvelous work." But no one came forward with money, then or later. Several times in the past years, I had tried to secure John D. Rockefeller Jr. as Sunday supper speaker. A fortnight before Christmas 1920, I tried again. He accepted for the Sunday before Christmas. After the program at which he spoke, our guest seemed reluctant to leave. He shook hands and talked to many students. I could see how deeply interested he was. A thought occurred to me. I think I'll ask him if he and Mrs. Rockefeller will have a holiday party at their house for the Latin Americans. Holiday parties for all the other groups had been arranged. I decided, yes, I will ask him. No, I won't. Better not rush him too hard. Better leave well enough alone. Yes, I will. No, I won't. Then suddenly I asked him, explaining the idea of holiday hospitality in American homes for foreign students who were away from home at Christmas. He listened attentively, then said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Edmonds. We'd like to, I'm sure, but our children are coming home from school, and I know our program is too full to take on anything more. But thank you for suggesting it." I could have kicked myself. I thought, why did you do it? Why not leave good enough alone? You've spoiled everything. In those pre-house Earl Hall days, getting up a Sunday supper was a huge task. Long extension tables were stored behind the stage. Linens, dishes, and food had to be brought up 2 flights of stairs from the basement. The preparation and cleanup afterward were exhausting. This supper, with what seemed the miscarriage of my hopes, was no exception. Monday mornings, I never showed up at the office very early. That Monday when I arrived, my secretary said, "Mr. Rockefeller's office called and wants you to phone." I phoned. Mr. Gumble answered. He said, Mr. Edmonds, have you made arrangements for the entertainment of those Latin students? No, I've just come in. Well then, Mr. and Mrs. Rockefeller would like to have the opportunity of having them in their home. Oh, that's splendid. The invitations were mailed. The Latin Americans were very pleased. The date agreed upon was a couple of days before New Year's. 2 or 3 days before the party was to come off, Mr. Gumble phoned. Mr. Edmonds, Mr. and Mrs. Rockefeller forgot that on the afternoon they are to have your students, they have arrangements for the opera in the evening, and they would like to know if you can bring them 1 hour early, at 4 instead of 5, because they would like to have plenty of time and not be hurried. Could you do that? I thought a moment, considering whether there was still time in which to send the students a notice of this change in the hour, and then said, "Yes, Mr. Gumble, we can do that." Mr. Edmonds tells us that the revised invitations were hurriedly mailed, and Mr. and Mrs. Edmonds arrived at the Rockefeller home promptly at 4 on the day of the party. They engaged the Rockefellers in conversation. He continues, "Suddenly, I realized time was passing. It was 10 after 4, then 4:15. I looked over at Mrs. Edmonds and Mr. Rockefeller, both of whom were absorbed in conversation. I continued with Mrs. Rockefeller, trying to cover up the embarrassment I was beginning to feel at the non-arrival of the students. At 4:20, Mr. Rockefeller came over to me and said, 'Where are your students?' 'I don't know.' 'Can't you find out?' 'I'll try.' I dashed down the long flight of steps to the ground floor. Through the glass door to a closet, I saw a telephone. It occurred to me that perhaps I could phone and find out where my students were. A rather silly idea, but for me it was an escape. As I was about to enter the phone booth, I saw a student being let in. I dashed to him and asked if he had received my note about the change of hour. Why, yes, he had. I was again about to enter the phone booth when I noticed a second student arriving. It was Pastorita Flores, secretary of the Latin group. She was from Ecuador, very pretty and a most eloquent speaker. I put my question to her. Has she received the note about the change of hour? Yes, I did, she said. Well, where are your students? They are half an hour late. Oh, Mr. Edmonds, don't you know it is an old Spanish custom to be late? Nobody is ever on time. In fact, whoever is the latest thinks he is conferring the greatest honor on his host. I was like a drowning man clutching for a straw. I ran back up the stairs, 2 steps at a time, thinking, these young people don't care a hoot if they keep the richest man in the world waiting half an hour. All they care about is their old Spanish custom. However, I'd found out something and related it to Mr. Rockefeller. He started to frown. Then his face changed to a smile and he gave a hearty laugh. He saw the point and was perfectly delighted. I told him 2 students had arrived and doubtless the others would be along shortly. By 4:45, over 50 had come, and by 5, the last few stragglers. Mr. Rockefeller made a most cordial little address of welcome, then introduced some musicians, after which he had invited us to the dining room where we sat down for supper, 4 at a table. When the delicious meal was finished, our host asked if each student would please stand up, give his name, country, where and what he was studying, and what his plans were. I have always felt that those Latin students were raised up for this occasion. They were bright, intelligent, attractive personally, many of them working days to support themselves that they might study nights. Their responses were precocious and eloquent and contributed very signally to Mr. and Mrs. Rockefeller's interest. Mr. Edmonds tells us that in the following days, Mr. Rockefeller spoke to Mr. Edmonds about his hopes and plans for a building. He continues, 2 weeks later, Mr. Rockefeller asked me to come to his office and said, I've been to see your site. It is splendid, and I agree with you. The western half should be secured, if possible. Is it still for sale? What do they ask? Who are your brokers? After I had answered his questions, he said, "Go to your broker and don't tell him who you represent, but tell him you are prepared to make a cash offer of $175,000. The time was 4 p.m. You can imagine that I flew on the wings of Pegasus to the Wall Street office of the Brown Wheelock Company. Is the property on Riverside Drive adjoining that which we have already purchased still for sale? Yes. The price? $250,000. Will you tell your principal that I am authorized to make a cash offer of $175,000? Oh, I'm not sure they will accept it. All right, but I should appreciate your inquiring. It was then 4:30 o'clock. I took the subway to my office at Broadway and the 114th Street. Everyone had gone. I opened my desk. There was a pile of letters for me to sign. On top of them was a penciled note from my secretary. Brown Wheelock phoned. Your offer is accepted. Then there ensued a series of interviews and letters in which Mr. Rockefeller expressed his desire to finance the entire project. Mr. Edmonds tells us that with the support of the Rockefellers, International House was built. The announcement Mrs. Edmonds wrote for the opening in 1924 read, "I am International House. I open my doors to the students of the world, that they may live together and grow in understanding. I am builded as a canopy for an adventure that had its beginning in a friendly greeting to a lonely student, which has widened into a world brotherhood. Therefore, I am not a beginning, but a fulfillment." Mr. Edmonds went on to promote international houses in the US and around the world. The Berkeley House was opened in 1930 and the Chicago one in 1932, both on sites as splendid as the one in New York. Of his many experiences through those years, Mr. Edmonds wrote, "I have been a foreign student myself in many lands and have a profound belief that if the world can be at peace long enough to permit the building of other centers on lines similar to the IH idea in New York, they will make significant contributions to world understanding and peace."
iHouse is unity. iHouse is harmony.